friends, Aaron Ritchie here, and I'm going to show you how to make world-class beer in your kitchen. You don't even have to be a hipster, you don't have to have $1 million, and you don't even need a beard, but the beard does help. So now what we're going to talk about is doing the mash. I'm a brew in a bag guy. I love doing brew in the bag. It lets me brew world-class beer in my kitchen. I don't need a whole bunch of vessels. I don't have to do a ton of cleaning, and so on. You definitely should check it out. What we're going to do today is we're going to do a mash with about 6 pounds of grain. This is going to be a 3-gallon batch of beer. We're going to use about 2.5 gallons of water in the mash. I'm going to heat it up to about 156, and then we're going to drop the grains in. So let's get to it. Now I'm using Poland Spring water. This is the water that I like to use. I like the taste of it. I like the various mineral qualities of it. You can get the water quality sheet online, and then you can basically adjust it in something like Brewing water, so the water meets your needs. I found that the Poland Spring water that was in the gallon, like jugs, was actually putting off some sort of plasticky flavor. So I've kind of switched to using these hard containers, and the water just tastes so good. The only thing to remember is that these containers aren't actually full gallons. They're a little bit less, so you have to factor that in. There we go. We'll do something like that. And speaking of gallons and measuring things, what I recommend you do is that you actually measure your kettle, your fermenters, etc., and put together a little sheet. So for my stuff, pretty much I measured, every half gallon, and then I recorded in a sheet, 6 inches equals this many gallons, and so on. Really handy, that way you can check your volumes. Anyway, I've done it so much in this one little kettle that I pretty much know all the volumes, without even having to look anything up anymore. But let's get this water going, and we'll come back in a bit. All right, our water reached temperature. We're going to be aiming for a mash in of like 146 degrees Fahrenheit. So I pretty much brought the water up to about 156, and then we can adjust from there. Just take another quick check. Right now the water's around 158, so it's a little bit high, but I can always add a little bit of cold water to get it right where I want it. What I like to do is I like to go a little high. Going low is a pain in the butt because you don't want to have to try to warm up your mash. It's just a pain in the butt. I just want to quickly mention, have this cool ThermoWorks thermometer, which I got a little while back. I've been really digging it. I'm not sponsored by these guys, but it doesn't mean I wouldn't like to be. Anyway, let's take this big old kettle. We're gonna move it over here. Let me get this iced coffee out of the way. And I'm an iced coffee guy. I drink iced coffee even when it's negative 10 degrees up in here in Vermont. So we got this big old bag of grains. What we're going to do is we are going to just put them right in to the water. There we go. Spread the bag out a little bit over the kettle. And now our goal is basically to get these grains all wet. And you got to watch out. You can have dough balls, which is pretty much just pockets of really dry grain that needs to be stirred up. So I'm going to stir it up for a bit. Get all that grain incorporated in the water. And then we'll take a temperature reading in a moment. And I'm using this kettle that I think is like a little bit under 5 gallons. So it makes it kind of rough for me to pull off like 2 3/4 gallon batches. It's just a little small, but it's possible. The other day I was brewing an old ale, and that had a really big mash bill. There was a lot of grain in it, and it was pretty iffy. I had to do a lot of stirring. My arm was getting pretty tired. There's a lot of pockets of dried grain in that one. All right, this one stirred up pretty good. Let's see where we're at temperature-wise. And I like this thermometer just because it gives such a quick reading. 147. That's so close that I'm almost happy with that. Pretty much I end up losing like 1 or 2 degrees type of thing through the mash. So I don't mind being a little bit high like that. All right, so now what we're gonna do is we are going to slap a lid on this. And then I have some of this reflectix, whatever type stuff. And I just wrap this around for a little bit of insulation. Kind of tuck it underneath the handle. Just keep it in place. Okie dokie. All right, and then what I like to do is I like to take a big old packing blanket. This is something that like movers have. In fact, I think we acquired this from some movers who forgot to take it with them one time when we were moving. And I basically just put it right over this thing. Just like that. You tuck your stuff in like it's a little baby going to bed at night. There we go. We set the timer. We're going to do 60 minutes on this bad boy. And that's it. There's the mash. We'll come back and maybe we'll do a little sparging in a bit. All right, an hour's passed and our mash should be done. Let's take a look and see what the temperature is, just for the heck of it. I'm going to take this big old packing blanket off here and get it out of the way. Take this insulation off. Alrighty, let's grab ourselves something to stir with. Give it a quick little stir. Let me get you guys a view of what we're looking at here. There you go. And let's see. 144 degrees, so we only lost like 2.5 degrees over that entire hour. So I find that the insulation setup that I use really works well. Alrighty, now comes the fun part. We got to get this bag up and out. So we're going to take the lid off. And let's see here. I think I'm going to move this over to the stove. Actually, you know what? I changed my mind. We're coming back over here. We're gonna lift. So what you gotta do here is you gotta make the biggest muscle you can make. Because you're lifting something. You're putting some love, you're putting some care into your brew. And we're gonna let it drain for a little bit. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to slap this big old strainer right underneath it. Just like that. And then we're going to just kind of lay out our grain bed here. Okay. Like that. Give it a little bit of a push, a little squeeze. And, you know, 150 degree water, it's pretty hot on the hands, so you can use gloves. I have some of those big kind of silicone gloves here, but I don't really need to use them. It just doesn't bother me that much right now. There we go. We're going to let that just drain for a little bit, and then probably what we're going to do next is we're going to do some sparging. All right, friends. What we're going to do now is we're going to do some sparging. And there's different ways that you can do brew in the bag. You can either not sparge at all. You can usually that's the best if you have a really big kettle, so you can have your full amount of water that you need for your brew in there. And then you basically put in a certain amount of grain, you pull it all out, and then you're done and you just go on with your boil. I don't have like a huge kettle that I'm using right now. I just can't really fit one very easily on my stove. So pretty much what I do is, you know, I use a certain amount of grain like we talked about before, and then I pull the bag and I'll sparge as needed. Sometimes I get a little crazy and I'll do a cold water sparge for brewing the bag. You may hear about that a little bit out there. I don't think a ton of people do it, but I think for brewing the bag, you can get away with it. We don't have to worry about you know, some huge massive grain bed inside of like a cooler mash tun setup where things can get stuck. Having the hot water can really help with a big mash like that. With this, it just doesn't really matter that much. I'm not too worried about it. Sometimes I'll heat up my water to like 168 for the heck of it. Today, I just didn't think about it. I'm not going to stress about it at all, because you know what? I've made plenty of delicious beer doing cold sparge. So we'll do this a bit. And pretty much all I'm doing here is I'm just pouring some water over the grains, and we're just trying to wash out as much of the wort as we can. We want to get as much of that delicious sugary wort out of here. And I'm going to adjust the grain around a little bit, and I'll squeeze it. And I'll just keep on doing that. It's just not rocket science here. And it's going to take a little while to get through as much water as I need to put through here to get up to a little bit over 4 gallons for this boil. It's going to be a 90-minute boil. So I will do that, and when we're all done, I'll come back to you. All right, so I've done some sparging, but I have not put all the water I need in here yet. There's a reason I do that. What I like to do is I like to check and see what the gravity is as I'm getting kind of close to the max volume that I want. And that way, if I need to, I can just put in just straight up clean water and not go through the grains at all to basically dilute it so I can hit my gravity. So, let's see here. Let's grab this refractometer, dip in here, move the grains right out of here for a minute. I'm just going to set them in a bag in the sink. Let me give this a nice stir. And you know what, let me get you guys down in here so you can take a look at what I'm doing. Okay, we got to stir this all up. That way we get a good reading. Alrighty. It's going to be a nice little saison, isn't it? Okay. Let's grab a little reading. Like we talked about, all you need is just a little tiny drop or two to get a reading on a refractometer. Let's see what we got going on here. Right now we're reading about 1.064. And my target, I believe, is 1.04. So, yep, 1.04. So what we can do here is we can probably add a little bit of water to start. And then do a little more sparging. And this is just a dance. This is something that you gain from experience. I kind of know when I should sparge a little more, when I should just add a little more water, and I can pretty much hit exactly what number I need to hit. All right, I'm going to fiddle around with that for a little bit, and when that's done, I'm going to come right back at you. All right, I did the little gravity dance, and I nailed the gravity. So what's going to happen next is it's going to go to the boil. Now I want to mention something. Take a look at this. Let me bring the camera in for you. That's an extremely full kettle. And we actually get into kind of a dangerous zone with that. I basically am going to have to babysit this the whole time until some boils down, especially when we're about to get the hot break. Because a boil over could really make a huge mess and it could injure somebody and so on. So if you never see another Ritchie Brewing video, you probably know what happened. But that's about it. Now everything else is just like you might do with any other beer making experience, whether you're doing extract or you're doing a 3-vessel setup. We're going to do the boil, we're going to add hops, we're going to do all that stuff. Maybe I'll sprinkle a little magic in there. And I think what we're probably going to end up with is some world-class beer. So don't forget, folks, you can make world-class beer in your kitchen, and let me know how it goes. Till next time.